Hello again, I'm Matthew from thewetpen.com, and while I was browsing on the Yoseka stationery website a few days ago, I ran across a brand of ink that I had never seen before, so I ordered a few bottles and they just arrived. This is an ink called Downpour, this one is Forest, and this one is Periwinkle Blue. They're all from a relatively new Korean company called Dominant Industry, as you can see here on the top of the box. And if we turn this to the side, it says Made in Korea down at the bottom, along with a bunch of other stuff that I can't read at the top. On the back, there's a slightly alarming amount of space taken up with warnings, but they're generally benign things like don't drink. Anyway, let's open these things up. I'll just cut through this label. And here inside we see that the bottle is in a protective bag. Which also has the company logo on it, and there's a little plastic eyedropper inside as well. But this is the good part. Look at this bottle. It's gorgeous. Smooth and round, and surprisingly large and heavy for a 25 milliliter bottle of ink. It fits perfectly into the cup of my hand, and I'm 6 feet tall. I'd buy this thing just for the bottle, though I do admit that in practical terms, the mostly round bottom of this bottle is a bit of a spill hazard. Dominant Industry makes a range of different types of ink. Some are pearlescent, some are only for dip pens, but these 3 bottles, as you can see, are the standard ones, and they're safe for fountain pens. Let's see what these look like. Starting with the Forest, I'll open up the bottle and put down a couple of heavy swabs on my test card here. I'll speed this up while it dries. I absolutely love this green. It's now one of my favorite greens that I own. There's so much depth in this swatch, with dark areas and light ones, but also areas that look like cool pine greens, and some that are warmer greens, too. Now let's see what the bottle of Downpour has in store for us. Immediately out of the bottle, this ink looks a little bit watery and maybe a little pink. But as it dries down, the ink is actually a very neutral gray. I was actually expecting a blue-gray ink here, but this is quite clearly just gray. A nice gray, though. And now, let's take a look at the Periwinkle Blue. Again, the ink feels a bit watery to begin with, but the color is surprisingly vibrant for a watery ink. It looks pretty blue at first, but as it dries, some of those namesake purplish areas start to appear. That is a really lovely ink. I also bought another ink at the same time, so I might as well include it here too. This box contains a bottle of ink from Taiwan's Lennon Toolbar, which is another Asian brand that has been getting really popular over the past several years. I like their mission statement from the back of the box, which is, to turn love into ink. Nice. Let me open this thing up. Inside the box we have, as expected, a 30 milliliter bottle of ink. It might not be obvious from the label, but this ink is in the atmospheric series of inks. It's called Twilight. The atmospheric inks are all waterproof, including this one, and it's a pigment-based ink rather than a dye-based ink. It's actually my first bottle of pigment ink ever. This card says at the top that it's an atmospheric ink called Twilight, but the rest is a mystery to me. Anyway, let's see how it looks. At first, it looks like a dark blue-gray. But this is another one that loses its color as it dries and turns into a nice, cool gray. It turns out to be sort of similar to the dominant industry Downpour, actually. Let's take a look at the swatches side by side. When they're next to each other, it's easy to tell that the Downpour is the warmer gray and the Twilight is more blue. Before I wrap this up, I'm not going to do full writing samples of these with different nibs on different papers. I'll do that in my reviews on the website, but I'll show you what these inks look like with a broad nib pen. First, this is Downpour. As you can see, it's completely gray. And from this pen, the ink is dark enough to be easily legible, and there's some decent shading that adds some character too. And here is Forest. This was written with a pretty wet broad nib, and it turned out to be quite dark, but the ink is smooth and well behaved on this Clairefontaine paper. And finally, this Periwinkle Blue is really growing on me. At first glance, it just looks like another medium blue with some shading. But it looks a little different. Those purple undertones make it a nice change from a standard blue. These dominant industry inks run from $17 to $20 from Yoseka Stationery, where I bought them. But yesterday I discovered that they're also for sale at Pure Pens in the UK for just $10 per bottle. So I bought a few more, just as any reasonable man would, and I decided to try at least one of the non-standard inks. As always, if you're interested in hearing about those inks when they arrive, just subscribe to my channel below, and you can also follow me on Instagram if you're into that sort of thing. I've got a link in the description. Enjoy your inks, everyone, and stay safe out there.